Right before the wedding, I suddenly backed out. I left Carrie, the woman I had always loved, and chose Winnie, the one I couldn't stand. Everyone was shocked, including Winnie. She thought I was kidding, her voice all scratchy. You call me a stalker, a psycho, a freak. How could you pick me? You hate me the most. Yeah, I did hate her the most. But in a past life, when I got kidnapped, she was the only one who dropped everything to save me. She even died trying to protect me. Getting another chance, I took her hand. From today, I won't hate you. Can I love you instead? Winnie's gaze dropped, and she chuckled bitterly, not buying it. I'm so crazy. How could you love me? Why not? I'm even crazier now, I said. That afternoon, I didn't have anything planned. As soon as I was up, I heard Carrie's voice. She was fixing her hair and clothes, sounding indifferent. It's just a wedding dress fitting. You can go alone. I was in a daze. Just a moment ago, I was at a damp, blood-smelling dock warehouse. Now, I'm here, listening to familiar words in a familiar voice. Somehow, I'm back on this day years ago. Carrie didn't get a response, assuming I was being difficult. She shot me a look, her tone growing impatient. Are you a toddler? Do you need someone for everything? Samuel, do I have to remind you? You're an adult. I glanced at her. She didn't have any plans for the afternoon. She was in a hurry to leave because her assistant Eric cut his finger making lunch. The injury wasn't severe from what I saw online, but he cried like it was the end of the world. She saw his video and was ready to go, probably to take him to the hospital. She was ditching me, her fiancé, for him. In the past, I didn't want to argue with her. I kept swallowing my pride, retreating more and more, which led to 3 years of neglect after marriage, 3 years of loneliness. In the end, kidnappers targeted her family's fortune and kidnapped me to extort money from her. On that day, she was celebrating Eric's birthday. Eric posted about it, saying the times were great, how Carrie waited in line for ages to get him his favorite cake. But that Carrie didn't even want to take my call. Frantically, I dialed Carrie's number dozens of times before she finally picked up. When she did, her voice was cold, dripping with impatience. Kidnap? Samuel, do you pull these sick tricks just to get my attention? Aren't you tired? If it's real kidnapping, let them kill you. She hung up ruthlessly, severing my lifeline. The kidnappers soon realized I was worthless to Carrie and decided to kill me. Right when everything seemed lost, the person who came to my rescue was someone I never imagined. Winnie. I knew her from school and had always detested her. There was a time when just looking at her would give me nightmares. Yet this person I despised risked everything to save me. When the kidnappers decided to kill and silence us, she shielded me. Every stab meant for me hit her instead. Her blood flowed over me, burning hot. With her dying breath, she whispered in my ear her final sigh. If there's an afterlife, will you not hate me anymore? Thinking of Winnie made my throat sting. I stood up, walked over to Carrie. Carrie assumed I'd stop her from leaving, and her face immediately turned cold. But I brushed past her, opened the wardrobe and got my socks. She raised her eyebrows, scoffing. What are you planning? Seducing me? I thought she was nuts. I put my socks on and said, Carrie, we're both fed up with each other. Isn't this pointless? Let's just call it off. No wedding. Carrie lost the last shred of patience. What's with this madness? I'm serious. Her emotions turned icy. She was so mad she didn't even bother speaking another word. Just slammed the door and left. I didn't care. I got my jacket and started packing. Everything important went into my suitcase, the rest in trash bags. When I left with my suitcase, I said to the housekeeper, "Can you toss the trash from the bedroom?" She looked stunned. "Are you heading out? Not coming back tonight?" "I'm not coming back." I smiled brighter than I had in a long time. I'd never be back. Outside, I called everyone, friends, family, telling them my decision. Then I posted a status update, canceling the wedding and pinned it. Everyone was shocked. They all knew how much I loved Carrie. When I was 10, after my family's business collapsed in F-City, my parents traveled constantly trying to save it, leaving me on my own. Carrie, who went to the same school, noticed the lack of parental attention in my life and took pity. giving me extra care. When I was old enough to understand feelings, I naturally developed a crush on her. Eventually, my parents returned to F-City. They noticed my feelings for Carrie, realized I could be used to connect with her influential family. They pushed me to build that connection. Due to their scheming, Carrie's family eventually agreed to a marriage alliance. I was over the moon, but then saw Carrie's indifferent face. That's when I realized her kindness was only pity, not affection. But I stubbornly believed one day she'd be moved by my love. Only after the kidnapping did I realize it was all one-sided. My parents used me as a tool, and to Carrie I was just trash. The only person who truly cared about me was Winnie, someone I never really noticed. She put her life on the line for me. On the day I was kidnapped, when the police finally rescued me, I was holding Winnie's body. She had grown cold. That's when I told Carrie, who showed up late, that I wanted a divorce. I thought I'd be heartbroken, but I wasn't. After that, I tried to understand Winnie. I realized that all my resentment toward her started from misunderstandings. All my hostility was just prejudice. She tried so hard to reach out to me, and I cruelly pushed her away every time. I fell in love with her 3 years after her death. It was also the same year I ended my own life. Before I died, all I could think was that if I could do it over, I'd love her so deeply, and we would be together. Thankfully, heaven granted my wish. I got to go back to when I could make things right. After calling everyone I needed to, I turned off my phone and drove straight to Winnie's company. Carrie runs an electronic tech company, and Winnie, well, she's his competitor. But unlike Carrie, who inherited business, Winnie built hers from scratch. God knows how much she struggled to get here. Right now, her company is just starting to find its footing. Not only is Carrie targeting her, but there are other companies circling like vultures. This is probably her toughest time. I parked the car and walked into her office building. The receptionist politely asked, "Sir, can I help you with something?" "I'm here to see someone. I'm here for Winnie." Her name seemed to surprise the receptionist. She paused for a moment before asking, "Do you have an appointment?" "No, just ask her to come down," I replied. The receptionist was bewildered, but after getting my name, she made the call. The call connected, and she said, "Winnie, there's a man here to see you. He says his name is—" "I don't know him. Tell him to leave," Winnie replied, cutting the receptionist off mid-sentence. Well, that was blunt. I just grabbed the phone. "Winnie, are you sure you want me gone?" There was silence on the other end for a long time, until finally, a calm voice said, "Wait for me." When Winnie stepped out of the elevator, I was momentarily stunned. The last time I'd seen her in my previous life, she had been disheveled, covered in blood, after taking a knife from me. She looked so frail then, but now she hadn't gone through any of that yet. Her tall figure stood out in the crowd, her striking looks drawing attention from everyone around. As she walked towards me, I noticed her elegant face and a small mole near her eye. Strange. How did I miss that in my previous life? My gaze made Winnie a bit uncomfortable. "Is there something you wanted to talk about?" she asked. I smiled at her. "Can't I come see you for no reason?" "No," she replied flatly. "This midday, I'm hungry. Can I take you to lunch?" I asked. Winnie blinked, looking a bit taken aback. "You want to eat lunch with me?" In the past, I always avoided her, never making such a request. I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. "Yes. Would you rather not?" Winnie hesitated, bit her lip, and then nodded lightly. I reached out my hand. "Want to hold hands? I'll count to 3, 1, 2. Before I could say 3, and to the receptionist's shock, Winnie raised her hand and gently clasped my fingertips. She was just so sweet. The restaurant was one I had reserved in advance, with a seat by the window. Sunlight streamed in, falling through Winnie's lashes and scattering in her eyes. She was unbelievably beautiful. Thinking back, Winnie was always good-looking from a young age. But she was so quiet and broody back then. She did things like follow and harass me, which made me hate and fear her. When I saw her, it felt like seeing a fly, and I had no interest in paying attention to her looks or anything. After she died, I learned more about her through the things she left behind in bits and pieces from other people. She truly was a good person. Winnie was very quiet now, She was focused on the hand I had held, seeming lost in thought. Compared to her younger, reckless self, she was now a bit more detached and poised, except for the occasional smoldering look she'd sneak my way. I took the steak she'd cut for me and ate a big bite under her anxious stare. She looked pleasantly surprised and happy. Such a simple gesture from me could lift her spirits this easily. But then she saw the wedding ring on my finger, and the light in her eyes dimmed as her voice turned cold. "Are you here to invite me to your wedding?" I froze, quickly pulling off the ring. How could I have thrown so many things away but forgotten the ring? Carrie had ordered the ring in a rush, and it didn't even fit right. It was loose on my finger. A little wiggle and it was off. I tossed it into the trash. "There won't be a wedding," I told her. "Carrie and I are over." Winnie stayed expressionless, clearly not buying it. "In a month, there's a project bid in the south of the city. You want me to back off and not compete with your company, right? Is that why you're here?" she asked. "What are you talking about?" I replied, baffled but also pained. Old Samuel would never look kindly at Winnie. He'd never share a meal with her, only scowl and begrudge her even a glance. So it was no surprise she didn't believe me, thinking I had an ulterior motive for being here. "I'm not lying to you. I'm serious," I said earnestly. Winnie's eyes were distant, her voice barely above a whisper. "You could never leave her. You loved her so much. But I don't love her anymore. Love is built on countless little details, and the lack of love is too. There were too many soups made and left cold. Too many nights spent waiting for someone who never came home. Too many calls that never got through, or got cut off as soon as they did, and too many harsh words dropped over my head." Towards the end, seeing her and Eric together, my heart was numb. There was no pain anymore. Maybe I had fallen out of love long before the kidnapping, even much earlier. This meal was steeped in weird tension. Winnie stayed silent, and I didn't know how to break the ice, so I just kept on adding food to her plate. I ordered all her favorite dishes. Of course, that's what I heard from others. Winnie barely touched any other dishes. She only ate everything I served her. By the end of the meal, we walked out of the restaurant side by side. She said, "I'll take you home." There was a hint of sadness and disappointment in her voice. Even though she tried to hide it, I could tell. I laughed lightly, but I don't have a place to go back to. I just moved out of Carrie's place today. My luggage is still in my car. My parents would love for me to crawl back and apologize to Carrie, but I ain't doing that. I have nowhere to go. Winnie, can you take me in? Winnie stared into my eyes without blinking. "You're serious? You want to live with a stalker like me?" The word stalker rolled off her tongue with a touch of self-mockery and cynicism. I answered her with action, stuffing my luggage into her trunk and hopping into the passenger seat, fastening my seatbelt obediently. Winnie looked at me for a while, trying to stay composed as she got in the car. But I clearly saw the faint smile on her lips. She couldn't hide it even if she tried. I thought to myself, you can keep pretending. We reached her place shortly. Winnie lived in a high-rise near her company. It was pretty big, but with barely any decor. It felt spacious and a bit empty. Honestly, a bit too cold and bare. Felt more like a large office than a home. Winnie paused by the door. "Are you really going to move in?" "Yeah. Don't you want me here?" In the warm light of the entrance, I saw her gulp slightly. "No." I moved closer, softening my voice. "Winnie, what are you afraid of?" I knew what she feared. Afraid this was just a whim. Afraid the more I learned about her, the more I'd grow to dislike her. Afraid I'd get close and then just walk away without a second thought. Winnie's voice was hoarse. "I just didn't think you'd come to find me or be this close to me." "Close? We're just getting started." I lifted my hand, gently wrapping it around her waist. It was merely a suggestive embrace, and Winnie froze like a statue, instinctively grabbing my wrist. Her voice trembled slightly. "Samuel, whatever it is you want to do, I admit I've lost. Stop messing with me." "I'm not messing with you. I'm serious." I kissed her voluntarily. I felt kind of lucky. Winnie's lips were cool, soft, really nice to kiss. She was a bit startled, stepping back until her waist hit the entrance table. Taking a break from the kiss, I lightly touched her waist and joked, "Your waist, ma'am, is a lethal weapon. Can I touch it for a bit? Do you even know what you're doing? Of course, I'm seducing you. You? You're so annoying. Are you done or not? I ran out of patience, kissing her more forcefully. Initially, Winnie was shocked, frozen in place. But that didn't last long. Her neck started to blush pink from my kisses, her body temperature rising as she unconsciously held on to me, her breath getting quick and uneven. Eventually, I scooped her up and carried her off to the bedroom, tossing her onto the bed. As I leaned over her, I noticed the thin sheen of sweat on her forehead. She was still somewhat rational up until this point. Samuel, any further and there's no turning back. I never planned on turning back. Winnie, I'm here to love you. I'm never leaving you again for the rest of my life. I knew Winnie was a bit wild, but I didn't expect her to be this wild. After fooling around all afternoon, my initial bravado was gone. I could only plead with her, my voice hoarse and my demeanor softer. Yet she showed no signs of stopping. Eventually, I ended up tearfully and bitterly calling her a beast in my frustration. Winnie stopped, still hot all over, and silently wrapped her arms around my waist. I snuggled her into my embrace, about to sleep, when I heard her whisper softly, "Why? Silly, because I like you." Winnie stayed quiet for a moment, then murmured hoarsely, "Impossible. There's nothing impossible." I kissed her and smiled. "You probably don't know, but fate allowed me to find you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come back." Winnie didn't quite understand, but seeing me shut my eyes, she didn't ask further. She just held me closer. If this was a dream, then let's dream a little longer. I woke up hungry. Groggily, I glanced at the clock. It was 6 a.m. We'd had a crazy afternoon, and I skipped dinner, so after a long night, my hunger was now rampant. The bed next to me was empty. Winnie wasn't around. Probably went back to work again. I felt a bit lonely. Yesterday's clothes were a wrinkled mess, so I grabbed something of Winnie's from her closet and stepped out of the bedroom. The morning light was dim. The living room was dark without the lights on, so I didn't notice anyone sitting on the couch. As I reached for the door, a hand grabbed my wrist. Winnie's silhouette was half hidden in the shadows, her voice low. "Leaving?" Before I could reply, she continued, "I won't let you go. You walked into this crazy person's home. What makes you think I'll let you walk out?" Winnie tugged me into her embrace, her fingers lightly touching my face. Her expression was neutral, but her emotions were intense, a definite obsession in her eyes. "I even want to lock you right here so you can't leave." I looked at her silently for a while. She couldn't hide her wild side anymore. Could it be possible that I had no intention of leaving at all? I grabbed her hand, placing it on my growling stomach, pitifully whining, "I'm hungry, just going out to grab breakfast." Maybe she'd been sitting in the somewhat cold living room for a while. Her hand was cool. She was silent for a moment, then pulled me back into the living room. "What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you." Some veggie pancakes, shrimp congee." Winnie walked into the kitchen, tying on an apron. I waited obediently at the kitchen door, watching her cook. Winnie had a naturally cool and distant vibe, but seeing her roll up her sleeves like this added a strange warmth and charm to her demeanor. She moved swiftly and skillfully, and soon the kitchen was filled with aromas that made my stomach growl. Once breakfast was on the table, I enjoyed it thoroughly. The shrimp porridge was flavorful, the vegetable pancakes were soft and tender, and with a glass of milk, my hungry stomach was satisfied. Winnie watched quietly from the side until I was done. Then she silently went to clean up the dishes. As I waited for her in the living room, I took out my phone and turned it on. The moment it powered up, a flood of messages smacked me in the face. Before I could even take a breath, Carrie called. I answered. Carrie was breathing heavily, her voice full of bitterness. "Samuel, where did you go? What's it to you? We're done. A good ex should be like they're dead, and I can go wherever I want, not that you get to ask." Carrie was speechless. I used to be accommodating, never losing my temper with her, definitely never saying things like this. She must have been pissed because her voice got even colder. "Just because I didn't go try on wedding dresses with you, you pull this? Samuel, you really know how to hold a grudge. Don't flatter yourself. We're over." Let's part on good terms. I hung up and blocked her. As soon as I did, Dad called. The moment I picked up, loud shouting came through the line. Samuel, what the hell is going on with you and Carrie? Whatever the issue, you have to take it this far. Don't you know our business needs Carrie's family's help? You? Your business, what's it got to do with me? When I was young, they were always busy working, leaving me with a nanny. Later, while traveling, they had another son. That son has already started handling company affairs, and I was always like something they stored away, used to exchange resources when I was old enough. In the past, I cared about family ties. But after I divorced Carrie, they said I abandoned the family for a dead person and kicked me out without hesitation. I spent 3 years alone, keeping watch over Winnie's ashes. No one cared about me until I died. After going through life and death again, I've seen through them. At the end of the call, I said, if you start minding your own business from now on, you might still have a shot at something. Otherwise, I'll bring out all the old mess you have and make sure none of us have a future. He cursed me out, but it didn't matter to me. The obedient son they used to have died on that dark, silent night. The Samuel that's here now isn't wasting any more emotion. Winnie was still in the kitchen, but the water had been off for a while. I hadn't hidden those calls from her. I had them on speaker. After hanging up, I walked to the kitchen and looked at the woman standing silently. Did you hear that? I'm serious about not marrying Carrie, and I'm done with my family. It's just me now, with no one to count on. I got nowhere else to go but here with you. I walked over and gently shook Winnie's arm. Winnie, I want to marry you. Will you say yes? Winnie turned to face me, her gaze like she was staring at a fragile dream. She seemed to be speaking to me, or maybe just muttering to herself. But you called me a stalker, a psycho, a creep. How could you possibly choose me? You used to hate me the most. Yeah, I once really couldn't stand her. She had no parents and grew up in an orphanage. She had to collect scraps for living expenses even while at school. A lot of people laughed at her, bullied her. Just because I pitted her and called the police to save her when she was surrounded by bullies, she got attached to me. She started following me. Every day to and from school, whenever I turned around, there she was, trailing me. There were even times when I'd open my window at night and see her standing outside. She followed me to college, too, and when an upperclassman confessed to me, Winnie broke the girl's arm that night. The girl had to take a semester off because of it. Her behavior was pretty terrifying. Those years, any time she got a bit closer, I'd lose it and scream at her to get away from me. For a long time, she was my nightmare. But after she died, I learned the truth behind everything she did. Winnie was indeed obsessive and sometimes extreme. Yet with me, she put down all her defenses. I was the only one she truly cared about. I held Winnie close by the waist, looked up earnestly at her. From now on, I don't hate you anymore. How about I love you instead? Love me? Winnie glanced down, giving a cynical smile. Crazy as I am, how could you love me? The scar I left was too deep, filled her with insecurity. She couldn't believe me at all. I had to remove that scar. All right, let me give you a chance to explain. Why were you so crazy? I led her to the couch, gently and patiently asking. Winnie, in high school, why did you stalk me? Winnie looked down. Because when you called the police and helped me, I heard them say they'd retaliate against you. So, she followed me every day to protect me, worried those gang members would come after me. She stayed outside my house because she saw those people lurking nearby. It was only me and a nanny at home then, no adults to protect me. She couldn't rest easy. There were many times, without me knowing, she stood up to those thugs alone. Once, she got badly hurt and missed a lot of school. Back then, feeling relieved she wasn't around to bug me, I didn't know she had broken several ribs. As she spoke, her voice was soft. She once tried to tell me, but my fear and biases overwhelmed me. I wouldn't let her explain. I'd just shout for her to leave. Eventually, she stopped trying to say anything. I touched her side gently, where bones had once broken for my sake. Even though it took me years, I finally knew. And why'd you fight that upperclassman in college? After you turned her down, she wasn't willing to give up. She planned to spike a drink and brag to her friends about getting you. I found out. So, In her anger, she broke that person's arm, making sure they wouldn't dare to lay a finger on me again. She thought she was being good to me in her own way. Ironically, that was the very reason I began to resent her. Now, after hearing her explanation, I sat up straight, corrected my posture, and sincerely apologized to her. I'm sorry. You were protecting me all along, and I misunderstood you for so many years. In my past life, I apologized too, but it was in front of her tombstone. Now, Winnie is right here in front of me. After hearing my apology, she seemed a bit overwhelmed. It wasn't really a misunderstanding. I did act like a lunatic sometimes. Maybe the sincerity in my eyes made her finally open up. I was born unwanted by my parents and was abandoned. Nobody wanted to adopt me because of my unfriendly temperament. I always felt like a wandering spirit on this earth, waiting to completely give up and leave forever. I didn't expect to meet you. The day those people surrounded me, I didn't fight back because I was ready to go. Many people passed by, not wanting to get involved, just a quick glance before leaving. But you stopped, scared yourself, yet called the police and screamed at them to stop. While we were waiting for the police, you looked at my wounds, and with tears in your voice, asked if I was in pain. At that moment, I decided I didn't want to leave. I wanted to tie you to me, to make you cry, laugh, care for, and cherish only me. Even now, I want to do that. I teared up as I listened. She suffered so much, yet fundamentally she never changed. Just from receiving a tiny bit of kindness from me, she wanted to repay it 1,000 times over. But you didn't end up doing that, I said. You wanted to tie me down, yet you gave me freedom instead, watching silently as I got engaged to Carrie. I sniffled, hugged her, and gently soothed her back. Winnie, I'm here for you. I'll never leave you, I promise. Winnie softly embraced my waist. Her voice, almost a sigh, whispered near my ear. Can I trust you? If you can't trust me, who can you trust? I didn't want to see her sad, so my hand naturally slipped under her shirt. Winnie, after a meal, you should move around a bit to help digestion. Winnie looked confused for a moment. So, shall we go for a walk? I meant a different kind of exercise, I clarified. Well, the couch works too. She was in my shirt, purposefully leaving a button undone, revealing her collarbone and shoulder. Winnie, how about it? I watched her breathing quicken. Yes. I burst out laughing and leaned down to kiss her. That thorn finally came out. I stayed at her place for a while after that. I thought her home, which felt like a lifeless office, needed a touch-up, so I got to work. I added warm colored pillows to the sofa, placed lovely scented flowers on the dining table, added vibrant plants to the living room, and hung carefully selected oil paintings on the walls. I even printed and placed our photographs on the living room shelves. Winnie loved these changes. I always thought this was just a place to sleep. Now it finally feels like home. Except, she seemed unsatisfied with the photo placement and stared at it for a long while. The next day, she returned with multiple frames filled with our pictures. One for the sideboard, the TV stand, the bookshelf, the desk, the windowsill, and the nightstand. Aren't you going a bit overboard with those photos? I asked. I love them, Winnie said, wrapping her arms around me and smiling. Really, really love them. Even her screensaver was a quirky picture of us. Me mock biting her ear while lying on her back. But why this one? You couldn't choose a nicer photo? This is my favorite. I like feeling this close to you, she said. Seeing the disappointment in her eyes made me instantly relent, nodding repeatedly. Okay, whatever you like. I agreed and then promptly ordered a privacy screen filter for her phone. Only she should see that picture. That was my last stubborn bit. With Winnie, I truly felt what being loved means. She's attentive, remembers every little thing I like, and notices quirks even I didn't realize. She's clingy, almost addicted to me, and gets anxious if she doesn't see me for a while. She even resembles a little kitten, always wanting to snuggle in some way. There's just one thing I can't quite handle. She's insatiable. When night falls, her wild side emerges, and whenever we're together, it's as though she wants to merge us into one. Many times, it leaves me breathless and my mind a blur. But as much as I struggle, I love it. I love that she loses control because of me. Her small gestures during passionate moments, the tiny beauty mark beside her eye that becomes even more pronounced with exertion, and her restraint when she's too concerned for me to continue. Waking from tumultuous dreams, I grasped the hand on my waist, and only then felt at peace. Suddenly, her hand shifted, tenderly patting me. "Why are you so sweaty? Bad dream?" "Yeah," I replied. "In it, you died saving me." Winnie paused, then turned me to face her, kissing me gently. "Don't think about it. It was just a dream. But what if it wasn't? What if it really happened and I lost you?" My eyes grew wet. "Winnie, just like you cherish me, I cherish you too. So, if something dangerous happens, please don't put your life on the line. Let's live through it together, all right?" The moonlight pouring through the window and the curtains swaying in the breeze supplied a perfect setting. Winnie held my hand, kissed my palm, and said, "Okay, let's become an old man and woman together, living our life fully. And thank you for cherishing me." My heart fluttered, tender yet slightly aching. "Winnie, you better keep your word." She hugged me tightly, smiling. "Promise." The next day, I prepared to head to work. Though calling it work, it was more like visiting a cafe I owned just to hang out. When I was with Carrie, she wouldn't let me work, so I was trapped at home every day. I was going crazy. I reached out to my buddy Felix. I brought the money, he brought the muscle, and we opened this shop together. I just needed to prove to myself that I had some value in life. Carrie doesn't even know about this. I only told Winnie. Winnie drove me to the shop, and we joked around on the way. Before getting out, I leaned over and kissed her as usual. "Sweetheart, come pick me up tonight," I said. There was a light in Winnie's eyes, and she nodded. "Sure, we'll head back home together." As I watched her drive away, I walked into the shop, only to see Felix with a pale face, signaling to me frantically with his eyes. Something felt off, so I turned to leave. But then I saw Carrie. She looked as put together as ever, holding a bouquet of roses. Normally, a tall woman with flowers looks gentle, but her face was serious, and there was anger in her eyes. "No wonder I couldn't find you these past days. You've been with Winnie." She walked up to me. Her sharp gaze cut through my face flushed with happiness, my neck with kiss marks, and my lips, still a bit swollen from our kiss. Her dark eyes were wild with emotion as she gritted her teeth. "No wonder you left without warning. You were with her all along, Samuel. How long have you been cheating on me?" I got angry too. "Watch your mouth before you speak. Does the Carrie family teach you to accuse without evidence? Cut the crap." Carrie shoved the bouquet into my arms, gripping my wrist tight. "I admit I've ignored you all this time. I'm sorry. Stop this nonsense. I'll pretend I know nothing about you and Winnie. Let's go, and we'll have our wedding as planned." I was surprised. Even after seeing me with Winnie, Carrie, with her high standards, still wanted me back. So I said, "Are you out of your mind?" Outside, people rushed to work as Carrie and I stared each other down inside. Her body was tense, about ready to burst, but she forced herself to stay calm. A vein even popped at her temple. "What will it take for you to come back?" In the past, my feelings would sway with hers. But now I was calm, unmoved. I shook off her grip. "I'm not going back. There's no love between us. Living a life together would just make us both miserable. Leaving early sets us both free, right?" My words were like a thorn. They struck a nerve with Carrie. She raised her voice. "Who says there's no love? We clearly—" She stopped, looking at me lost. She finally realized in all those years together, she never treated me right. I looked at the roses in my arms and said sarcastically, I never even liked roses. They're bold and beautiful, but I don't like intense. I prefer the elegance of Lysianthus. Other girls might like these roses, Eric too. But not me." I tossed the bouquet into the trash can next to me. Carrie froze, her eyes on my hand. "Where's your ring?" "Your ring?" She suddenly got irritated, yanking my hand. "The ring? Where's the ring?" Felix, startled by her shout, quickly ran over. "Don't cause a scene in my shop. Let Samuel go. Get lost. It's none of your business." Felix got pushed, hitting a table. I worried and wanted to check on him, but Carrie had me in a grip. That's our wedding ring. Why aren't you wearing it? Who wants to marry you? Samuel? Stop calling me. Hearing my name from you disgusts me. I was furious, struggling to break free even if it meant my wrist broke. Carrie let go suddenly. She looked behind me. Is it because of her? I turned to see Winnie walking toward me. Felix clutched his side, grimacing, and flashed his phone at me. He quickly texted Winnie when things went south. Luckily, she hadn't gone far. A lot of people disapproved of me and Winnie, but Felix was one of the few who supported us. He just wanted me to be happy. Seeing Winnie, my anger at Carrie dissolved into frustration. Winnie took my hand, noticing the red marks from Carrie's grip. She looked at Carrie, her gaze cool. Carrie, I thought you were too dignified to take out your anger on others. Carrie stared at me coldly, scoffing. This is between me and Samuel, none of your business. But this time, he chose me. He'll never choose a freak like you. Carrie swung a punch unexpectedly. Winnie's head snapped aside, a trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth. My anger boiled and I slapped Carrie hard. Silence fell instantly. I was shaking with rage. Who I choose is my decision. It's not yours to make. I took Winnie's hand with one hand and grabbed Felix with the other. Come on, let's get you to a hospital. I turned with them, not looking back. So I didn't see Carrie standing there, lost and helpless, staring at the flowers I had tossed. Halfway there, Felix insisted he was fine despite a minor bump and wanted us to drop him off at his girlfriend's. On the phone with her, he exaggerated his pain and cursed out Carrie's ancestors. After he got out, Winnie said her injury wasn't serious enough for the hospital. So I bought some medicine and we headed back home. When I was applying ointment to Winnie's mouth, she suddenly held my hand. That's when I realized my wrist hurt and was swollen. It wasn't Carrie who did it. It was entirely because I hit Carrie too hard and hurt myself. Winnie sighed and took the medicine from my hand to apply it to me. Next time, remember to wear a wrist guard before hitting someone. I thought about it and shook my head. No, next time I'll use a hammer. If she bothers me again, I'll give her a serious blow. Winnie laughed and hugged me. She whispered in my ear, so this is what it feels like to be the favorite. Although I said I'd love her, maybe she never really felt it until today when I defended her without hesitation in front of Carrie. She said, I'm really happy, Samuel. I kissed her and promised, I'll show you more and more love from now on. Winnie nodded softly. I'm looking forward to it. But I have a question. I supported my arm and looked at her. You're obviously great in a fight. So how did Carrie manage to land a punch? Winnie coughed lightly and avoided my gaze. She hit suddenly, that's why. The truth, please. I let her hit me on purpose so you'd feel sorry for me. Such a trickster. I snorted and continued applying the ointment. Well, your plan worked. I did feel sorry, so don't do that again. And I added one more thing. Next time, don't get hit. Just hit back. Winnie couldn't help but laugh. Okay, I promise. To avoid being tangled with Carrie, Felix simply closed the store for a while and went on a vacation with his girlfriend. I also kept it low-key and visited Winnie whenever I had free time. She was busy with work, so I didn't bother her. I just hung out in her office while she worked and I watched shows. At work, Winnie is always meticulous, serious, and cool-headed. Her office is always neat. The entire company knew about our relationship. When I went to the break room to get coffee, Winnie's assistant, Shirley, was there. She's a quiet girl. Her look was always somewhat complicated when she saw me. I know how she feels. It's probably the same way I felt when I looked at Eric beside Carrie back in the day. I gave her a polite smile. Just as I was about to leave with my coffee, she mustered the courage to stop me. Samuel, please don't abandon her. Without you, she wouldn't make it. I paused and turned around. Shirley's eyes were a bit red. She stared blankly at her toes for a moment, then suddenly bowed and apologized. I'm sorry, Samuel, it was inappropriate. No need to apologize. I believe what you said, because I know it's true. In our past lives, before I got married, she risked coming to me in the pouring rain, crying and begging me to see Winnie. I was so full of resentment for Winnie at the time, stubbornly thinking it was a trick and said a lot of harsh words before driving her away. But after the wedding, Winnie did end up in the hospital. If it hadn't been for Shirley breaking into Winnie's home and rushing her unconscious to the hospital, Winnie would have died. Winnie's a bit of a wild card, naturally extreme and crazy, harsh to others and even harsher to herself. I can only imagine the despair she felt watching me marry someone else. Don't worry, I told Shirley. This time I'm not going anywhere. Shirley smiled a relieved but slightly bitter smile before leaving the break room. The next day, I saw Shirley's transfer request on Winnie's desk. She wanted to move to a branch in another city. Seeing me pick up the paperwork, Winnie said, "Shirley's got great work capabilities. She'd have better prospects staying here." I don't get why she wants to move. I just said, she's a good person. I hope the move brings her a brighter future. I thought since Carrie and I had a huge fallout and I cut ties with her, she'd move on. But I was wrong. Carrie seemed to have lost it. She was aggressively targeting Winnie in business, maliciously snatching away several of her projects. But Winnie never said any of this to me. If I hadn't overheard some colleagues talking about it, I wouldn't have known a thing. Winnie's company wasn't easy to establish. I knew how important it was to her, and Carrie's actions were just so underhanded. Out of nowhere, a strange phone call came in, and when I answered, I heard Carrie's voice. "Samuel, Winnie's going down. Are you still going to be with her?" I was pissed. "Carrie, I used to think you were just a jerk, now I know you're also a backstabber. Is that how you really see me? Aren't you?" Carrie went silent for a moment, then said, "I'm downstairs at Winnie's company. Come out, I need to explain." I wanted to hear what she had to say, but before heading out, I swung by Winnie's office. She was reading some documents, and when she heard the door, she looked up. 1 second she looked aloof, but when her gaze met mine, it was filled with warmth and tenderness. "What's up? What's got you running in so fast?" "My dear girlfriend, my unlucky ex is here. She said she wants to explain why she stole your projects. Are you okay with me going to listen to her?" Winnie hugged my waist, tilting her head thoughtfully. "As your girlfriend, I don't want you seeing her, but I know she won't give up. If she doesn't get to talk now, she'll find another time. Then I'll go hear her out, and as soon as she's done, I'll come back so we can have lunch together." Okay. With her permission, I headed downstairs. Carrie was leaning on the railing, hair a bit messy, eyes bloodshot. I'd never seen her look so rough. "All right, spill it," I said, standing before her. She stared for a moment before speaking. "Winnie's nothing but a flash in the pan. Without those projects, her company won't last. Do you really want to spend your life with such a broke woman? I really shouldn't have come down. Shouldn't have trusted that anything normal would come out of that dead guy's mouth. If that's all you wanted to say, then you should go back." I turned to leave, but she grabbed me. "I don't believe you really want to be with her. You used to hate her the most, and I definitely don't believe you don't have any feelings left for me." With a tug, I was pulled into her arms. She lowered her head slightly, like she wanted to kiss me. A wave of adrenaline hit me, and I reacted without thinking, shoving her away hard. I pushed so hard that Carrie stumbled, almost falling. When I turned around, I saw Winnie not far off. In that moment, I got it. Carrie wanted to do that because she saw Winnie, wanting to make it look like we were close. She didn't expect me to react so decisively. Carrie's expression turned ugly. Her eyes were full of unwillingness. I didn't look at her again and went straight toward Winnie. Winnie glanced at Carrie, a barely noticeable shadow passing through her gaze. Back in the office, I sat beside Winnie. "I didn't think I'd cause you so much trouble. This isn't really trouble." Winnie looked at me with a smile. "The biggest trouble for me would be if you didn't want me anymore." "I'd never not want you," I said seriously. "Me, Samuel, I'm stuck with you for life." That night, after we got home, Winnie and I lost ourselves in a wild adventure. We couldn't even wait till the hallway. Between kisses, Winnie whispered with bated breath, "Samuel, you have no idea how happy I am." Before I could answer, she pushed me onto the bed. When I woke up, she was clinging to me. It was too hot, so I nudged her. "Hey, give me some space." Half asleep, She fluttered her eyelashes and pulled me back. No, you're being unreasonable. Yep, unreasonable. The more time I spent with her, the more I realized how playful she actually was. I could only sigh and settle back. No choice. I picked her, so I had to pamper her. During the day, Winnie went to the company first. I made some preparations and showed up before evening. I brought flowers, midnight tulips, mysterious and elegant in deep blue, Winnie's favorite color. When I walked into the company, everyone was surprised, watching me head into Winnie's office. Hiding the flowers behind my back, I stood in front of Winnie. She put down her work and smiled at me. What are you hiding? Guess. I can't. With a flourish, I brought out the flowers. For you. Do you like them? Winnie was a bit surprised. She took the bouquet, happiness spreading in her eyes. She gently caressed one of the tulip petals. What made you suddenly think of giving me flowers? Because I like you, so I want to give you beautiful things. Winnie stopped for a moment, then took out a small box. What's this? When I opened the box, 2 shiny rings sparkled up at her. The diamond rings glittered, as did her eyes. I smiled and asked, this surprise, do you like it? Outside the office, there was whispering with a hint of gossip among the employees. The evening sun streamed in, casting light over Winnie. She looked at the rings for a long time, then raised her eyes to mine, emotions swirling intensely. I love it, she said in a shaky voice. I couldn't help but choke up a bit too. So Winnie, will you marry me? Just like the bouquet's message. A confession of love. I was proposing to her. Her fingers trembled as she put on one of the rings, then took the other and slid it onto my finger. Not loose or ill-fitting, unlike any rings I'd worn before. These rings were custom-made, just the right size. When I looked up, I saw tears at the corners of her eyes. She held my hand gently. It's the luck of a lifetime. I sniffed and asked, when do we go to the courthouse? Now. With wedding preparations underway, the year-end was approaching. My family called again for probably the 100th time, softening their tone and asking me to come home for a meal. After thinking it over, I finally went, partly thanks to Winnie's persuasion. I didn't expect it to be a trap. As soon as I entered the restaurant, I saw Carrie at the table. Whatever good mood I had vanished instantly. My dad always acted a bit fawning toward Carrie, and so did my mom. My brother bluntly told me to sit next to Carrie, saying, Samuel, look how much weight she lost because of you. Why don't you help her eat more? Carrie said nothing, just looked at me silently. I held up my hand at the table, the ring on my middle finger shining brightly. My brother hymned, wow, sis-in-law, the ring you got for my brother looks amazing. When did you guys reconcile and why didn't you tell me? Got a wedding date set yet? Before he could finish, Carrie stood up abruptly. Just a moment ago, she was still composed, but now she couldn't keep it together. How could you wear someone else's ring? Her voice was hoarse, her shoulders tense, holding onto the chair so hard her knuckles turned white. Her embarrassment laid bare. How could you? Because I can. I pulled out a marriage certificate from my bag and set it on the table. Silence fell over the room. Carrie stared at the 2 documents without blinking, as if in shock. My parents went pale, too shocked to keep up their facade. My dad rushed over and slapped me. Samuel, how could you marry someone else? What about me? Holding my stinging cheek and tasting blood, I couldn't help but let out a derisive chuckle. What? I didn't sell myself to a bidder you liked, so you can't count on Carrie's family anymore? That's tough to swallow. Huh? They were silent, glancing nervously at Carrie. Carrie didn't even look at them. Her eyes slowly moved from the marriage certificates to my face. You really chose her? I said, yes. After saying it, I glanced around at the circle of people, scoffing at my words. This family gathering was a disaster. I picked up my bag and left. The sky was already dark outside, and snow was falling gently. I hadn't walked far while clutching my still aching face when suddenly someone rushed up behind me. It was Carrie. She grabbed my hand tightly, bending her back, and in that moment, all her pride vanished, leaving only humility and a plea. What will it take for you to come back? I'll change anything, everything, she said. Stop it, Carrie. Stop fixating on me. You should be with Eric now. Carrie looked visibly upset. What are you talking about? I have nothing to do with him. Is that so? I pulled out my phone to show her Eric's posts. Starting from the first post, there it was. Carrie brought me to Barcelona. It's so beautiful. I love it. I love Barcelona. And I love the gift Carrie gave me. I really like it. Birthday today. Carrie spent the whole day with me. I'm so happy. And the most recent one. Cut my hand with a knife, it hurts. But luckily, her presence makes the pain feel like happiness. The more Carrie read, the more bewildered she appeared. This isn't right. I didn't do any of these things. Still denying it. I calculated the timeline, compared it to past experiences, and sneered at Carrie. And the child you secretly aborted? Was that not between you and him? Carrie's face turned pale like snow. You knew? But I didn't do it on purpose. I was drunk, that's why? No need to explain to me. I don't care about your love life. Just know, those years you ignored me were real, your cheating was real, and my lack of love for you is real too. Having said my piece, it was time to head home. I turned to leave. Carrie tried to follow, but Winnie appeared out of nowhere and punched her hard. Winnie's punch was much heavier than the one Carrie had given me. With just one blow, Carrie fell to the snowy ground and couldn't get up for a while. Winnie's voice was colder than the wind and snow. Stop pestering my love, or next time, I can't guarantee what I'll do. Winnie had come to get me. After hitting Carrie, she returned to her gentle demeanor. Are you cold? Nope, let's go home. Winnie is always so considerate. My bad mood vanished instantly, and I couldn't help but hug her. You got coffee ready? Flat white, your favorite. Wow, you really get me. I was happy when suddenly, a voice filled with discontent came from behind. Samuel, did you know she's been secretly keeping your stuff since school? She's a freak. Are you sure you want to be with her? Winnie's face turned pale, and she looked at me anxiously. But I just smiled. So what? I'd still choose her. Under Carrie's disbelief, I held onto Winnie's arm and walked forward with her lovingly. Let's go, darling, let's go home. I could go anywhere in Winnie's home, except for one room that was always locked. Winnie was tight-lipped about that room, and every time I asked, she would just press her lips and keep quiet. But the truth is, I knew what was in there. In my past life, after she died, I opened that room and saw everything inside. On the way home, Winnie didn't talk. Not until we walked in the door did she nervously ask, Samuel, aren't you curious? I smiled at her. Everyone has secrets. If you're not ready to tell me, I'll wait until you are. So there's nothing to ask. Winnie lowered her eyes for a moment and then came over to hold my hand. Come with me. She led me to open the door to that room. The first thing I saw were the walls plastered with photos. The earliest photos were secretly taken in high school, over 10 years ago, but still well preserved with only a slight yellowing. There were pictures of me running, drinking water, napping, reading at the library, exercising. From my high school days through college to before being with Carrie. Every photo was placed in a delicate glass frame, neatly hung on the wall, along with many items that once belonged to me. The memories seemed like they were from yesterday. Winnie watched me as I played with the items she had cherished for years, slowly lowering her eyes. She whispered, Carrie was right, I am a freak. My infatuation with you is sick and dark, like a maggot in the corner, cautiously and greedily peeping at you. Even though I knew you only felt disgust toward me, I still fantasized about earning your sympathy. I've heard enough. I turned to kiss her. But I like this side of you. Whether you're sick, obsessive, or crazy, it's all because you love me. From when we first met 10 years ago to now, a decade later, time changes many things. But your love for me has been constant, more precious than anything. Winnie's long eyelashes quivered. So, you're not upset about this room? Of course not, I reassured her with a smile. Not only that, but we'll also keep adding to it. I raised my eyes and met Winnie's dark gaze. In them was a deep, bone-penetrating tenderness and affection. She collapsed into my arms. I must have used all my luck in this life to meet you. Then I must have used up next life's luck to have another chance to see you. My Winnie, she'll never know. Once you get to know her, Loving her is the simplest thing. That night was more intense than any other. This time, I took the lead, straddling her, tracing her eyebrows and eyes with my hands. I've always thought Winnie was a contradiction. She's reserved yet passionate, like a flame ignited on an icy plain, scorching and glaring yet drawing you in closer. Winnie gasped and asked me, "What are you looking at?" I leaned in to kiss her. "The mole by your eye, it's seducing me." Winnie laughed and hugged me. Did it succeed? It did. For the rest of my life, it and its owner are mine. Carrie, in a frenzy, wanted to defeat Winnie. But she forgot Winnie was crazier from the start. Carrie had everything handed to her, standing on her family's shoulders, while Winnie fought through endless obstacles to reach this level. Who has more talent is obvious. The new projects filled the gaps left by stolen ones, and Winnie stole several of Carrie's disgruntled employees. In her anger and impatience, Carrie made mistakes, and the company's stock kept dropping. Now Winnie has the upper hand. Carrie approached me a few more times, but I refused to see her. I was devoted to Winnie, spending every moment with her. At home, I needed to be with her. At work, even more so. So much so that their employees secretly started a thread on a forum to complain about us being a public display of affection, and it reached over 2,000 posts. It's insane. After some time, I visited the cafe again. Felix was back from vacation and in a good mood. He gossiped about Carrie, saying Carrie fired Eric in front of many at the company. Eric cried, even begged on his knees, but Carrie was unmoved and left without hesitation. I felt confused. What happened to Eric? Why did he fall out of favor? Turns out, Eric never really rose in favor to begin with. Felix glanced at my phone. I specifically found out Eric's posts are all about work. Only you could see the sweet moments he cleverly staged to push you away. Later, he discovered without you around, he took a risky move, drugged Carrie at an event, and they spent the night together. Carrie despises him and even aborted the child against his protest. Even if Carrie didn't technically betray me, her coldness and distance were real. She's not worth my love. The one who is right here with me now. After losing Carrie's family's support, my parents started looking for another connection. They once looked down on Winnie. Now they have to flatter her, which I snored at. Winnie felt that disdain, but because of me, she showed them respect, remained polite, and occasionally shared some of her resources. I wasn't happy about it. Winnie reassured me, they are still your parents. They brought you into this world. That alone is enough for me to be grateful. I teased her, you're a nutcase. She replied confidently, but you love this nutcase. All right, you're right. Because I'm so happy now, I rarely think about past misfortunes. Until just like in the past life, I was drugged and thrown into a car. When I woke up, there was dampness and darkness all around. It was the warehouse, a different time but the same place. Still groggy from the drugs, I lay on the ground, tense with anxiety. How could it be? I've left Carrie behind. Why am I tied up here again? 2 male kidnappers stood nearby, the same ones who abducted me in my past life. In my confusion, a man stepped forward. My eyes went wide. Eric? It's you. Eric looked nothing like his previous self, now haggard and sinister, glaring at me viciously. Samuel, don't blame me. You're always haunting us. I finally got rid of you, but Carrie only cares about you. I tricked her to carry my child thinking she'd accept me, but she ruthlessly aborted it. Everything I've lost is because of you. Listening to his howls, my mind drifted back to my past life. Tied in the car, vaguely hearing a voice talking to the kidnappers. Even though Carrie didn't love him, he still clung on. Only with him gone, I could marry Carrie. I was too scared to notice it then, but now the past overlaps with the present. So that's it, through lives, he's the one who harmed me. Eric's hatred for me in this life weighs heavier, stalking toward me. He grabbed my hair roughly. I didn't want to do this, but you're in the way. So die. I caught his hand, biting down hard. Not only does he hate me, but I also hate him. The accumulated resentment of 2 lifetimes gives me strength. The taste of his blood flooding my mouth. Eric screamed so loud, kicking and trying to shove me off, but I wouldn't let go. Angered, he slammed my head onto the ground. With intense pain, I released him and furious Eric gave me another savage kick. "How dare you bite me? I'll make you die a slow, painful death." The blows left me dizzy, vision flickering, losing the capacity to act. I could only watch helplessly as Eric talked to the kidnappers. Then came their anger. "What did you say? You promised money for this. If you're broke, why call us, you punk? Are you jerking us around? Why, you can ask Carrie for it." The kidnappers exchanged a look, eyes filled with malice. My heart sank. Damn, just like last life, they mean to kill to cover it up. One kidnapper kicked, sending Eric sprawling with a pained scream. No matter how hard I tried to resist, my badly injured body couldn't hold on. Things started to blur, and eventually, everything went dark. I woke up feeling hot. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw flames rising around me. Did they set the place on fire? Eric was lying not far from me, still unconscious. The smoke was thick, and the heat was intense. I dragged my weakened body and struggled to crawl towards the door. Even though the door was closed, there was no other exit in this warehouse. The heat was unbearable, and the smoke was choking. I didn't get far before I collapsed, coughing violently. Suddenly, I heard someone shouting, getting closer and closer. "Samuel!" It was Winnie. There was a sound at the door, and soon it opened from the outside, letting bright daylight flood in. Winnie's face lit up with relief when she saw me. Without hesitating, she pushed through the flames and pulled me into her arms. Her heart was racing, and her whole body was trembling. Her voice was hoarse and terrifying. "Thank goodness I made it. I was so worried everything in the past would happen again. The kidnappers must be around, be careful. I know I arranged for people in advance. The kidnappers are already under control, and the police are on their way." I paused for a moment. How did Winnie know all this? I was too weak to move. Just as Winnie was about to help me out, she looked behind me, her eyes widening in shock, and instinctively pushed me aside. I watched as Eric, who had just woken up, charged over and knocked down a nearby shelf. Winnie, unable to dodge after pushing me away, got pinned underneath. I felt a chill run through me, and I screamed hoarsely. "Winnie!" I struggled to get up and shoved Eric to the ground. "How dare you hurt my girlfriend? I'm gonna skin you alive." Eric, too, was badly beaten up and couldn't get up right away. I ignored him and rushed to Winnie. Seeing the bloody wound on her head, tears started streaming down my face. I wanted to move the shelf off her back. But as soon as I touched the iron rack, Winnie grabbed my hand. "Don't touch it. It's hot. You'll get burned." That's when I realized the steel frame was glowing red from the heat. I burst into tears. "It's so hot. Does it hurt?" "Don't worry about me. I'm wearing a bulletproof vest, fireproof and stab-proof." Winnie pushed me anxiously. "My people are nearby, and the police should be here soon. Leave me, you go." "No, you're not pushing me away again." I gritted my teeth, grabbed the shelf, and lifted it with all my strength. "Winnie, we're going home together." Seeing me like this, Winnie said nothing more. Despite her injuries, she also pushed with all her might to crawl out. I'm not sure how long it took. Maybe seconds, maybe minutes, maybe even longer. Until my vision flickered. Suddenly Winnie embraced me. She made it out. Her clothes had burned through in places, revealing the scorched skin underneath. But her gaze was only on me. "Samuel, don't sleep. Let's go home together." I nodded with difficulty, gritting my teeth, as Winnie helped me step by step towards the exit. There were many times I almost gave in, but she kept supporting me. In both my past life and this one, she always comes to save me from danger. She's always by my side, just like how night eventually turns to day. Suddenly, a weak, fearful voice called out behind us. "Don't go, don't go. Help me. Save me." It was Eric. He couldn't walk because of his injuries, and surrounded by the growing fire, he could only scream for us to save him. But neither Winnie nor I looked back. I just gritted my teeth and sneered. "You're gonna get what you deserve." In the end, this incident concluded with Winnie and me having minor injuries, Eric being severely injured, and both kidnappers getting caught. It was kind of ironic. Eric had tried crawling with his useless legs, but the fire was all around him. The shelf he knocked over blocked the only way without flames, trapping him in the hell he had created. By the time firefighters rescued him, he was on fire. That once handsome face was ruined, and one leg had to be amputated. Meanwhile, I was lying in a hospital bed, being fed apples by Winnie. I had a pretty serious head injury, wrapped in multiple bandages, with my hands all bandaged up too. Winnie had a lighter head wound and some burns on her arms, but nothing too serious. She could still move around and took it upon herself to take care of me. Carrie came by at some point. I didn't really want to talk to her, and for once, neither did she. Just as she was leaving, she finally spoke up. She apologized to me. After your parents approached mine, my dad wanted me to marry you. I stubbornly believed that your family was only interested in my family for benefits, so I didn't want an arranged marriage and deliberately distanced myself. I knew it was all arranged by our elders, and nothing to do with you, yet I still couldn't help but blame you. I took advantage of your love for me, venting all my negative emotions onto you. I assumed you'd never leave me, but when you really did, I realized how important you were to me. I was the only one clinging to this relationship. It's a shame I only realized this after losing you. Carrie suddenly couldn't continue. Her voice choked with tears. Samuel, I'm sorry. She left as Winnie came in with fresh hot water. Carrie told her, in loving him, I can't compare to you. You win. Winnie couldn't care less about what Carrie had to say. Her focus was only on me. After escaping the warehouse, I quickly slipped into unconsciousness. When I woke, the first thing I asked Winnie was when she remembered. Yes, Winnie was reborn too. The day I got kidnapped, she responded swiftly, called the cops, made arrangements, and wore a stab-proof, fireproof, bulletproof vest. Only someone who lived through it could have prepared like that. Winnie admitted as much. Not long after you came to me, I had a dream. Tears just started falling. Why didn't you tell me? 'Cause I didn't think I needed to. She kissed my face with so much care. The past life doesn't matter. What matters is now, and that you love me. I was sobbing uncontrollably. That day, Winnie comforted me for what seemed like forever. Everything is clear now. No more secrets between Winnie and me. Seeing her again, I wore a long face, raising my hands. When can I finally leave the hospital? I'm so bored. Winnie fed me an apple as she spoke. Hang in there just a few more days. These days, I can't do a thing, but once I'm out, I'm gonna make you stay for 3 days and nights straight. Winnie quickly blushed and covered my mouth, but she was a bit late. Felix, who's visiting me, just stepped in to hear my cheeky comment. Felix. He came in quietly, placing down flowers and a fruit basket, his eyes fixated on me and Winnie. It made me uneasy. What are you looking at? 3 days after I got out, Eric jumped off a building. He was badly burned. Even getting out of bed was hard. No idea how he climbed onto the ledge. Hearing this, I was somewhat moved. In my past life, I ended things in despair, and now it's his turn. Seems fair in a twisted cosmic way. That night, I had a wild, chaotic dream. I was walking home from school. When I looked back, there was a slender girl trailing behind at a distance. When she saw me turn around, she paused, unsure. I reached out my hand to her. Why are you staying so far away? Are you some stalker? Get over here already. Her eyes lit up and she ran towards me. The sunset drew long shadows beneath our feet. In college, a senior confessed to me from below my dorm. Amid the teasing of others, I came down and loudly told her, "Sorry, I already have a girlfriend." The senior looked awkward. Then, a tall girl pushed through the crowd, facing the senior with displeasure. "Sorry, my boyfriend has no plans to change girlfriends." I added with a grumble, "Not just no plans now, but never in this lifetime." The crowd erupted with cheers and teasing. Meanwhile, the girl next to me blushed. I opened a cafe. In the afternoon, with no customers around, the sunlight was so cozy I almost fell asleep at the table. Suddenly, a familiar warmth appeared beside me. Something soft and warm landed on my lips. "Don't sleep or you'll be up all night." Without opening my eyes, I reached out and hugged her waist, snuggled in. If I can't sleep, I'll just sleep with you. She became flustered. We're in the shop, you know? No customers, and if there were, they'd just get free dog food. Dream scenes shifted, flashing through a lifetime. I opened my eyes. Next to me, a hand gently touched the corner of my eye. What were you dreaming about? Why are you crying? I turned, snuggling into Winnie's arms. Wish I had my second chance earlier. I'd have accepted you sooner, spared you the pain and sorrow. Winnie paused, then smiled, kissing me. Meeting you is happiness enough, no pain in that. She's always like that, so good it aches my heart. I kissed her, feeling her warmth and breath intertwine with mine. Winnie's gentle laughter was lost between our lips. The past belongs to the past. Our future stretches ahead, long and full. Epilogue. Winnie was upset with me. The reason? Felix and I got carried away. We hit a bar, and Felix got excited and called over a few models. They were all so graceful, stunning figures. Dazzling. As Felix and I were about to approach them, our girlfriends arrived with stern faces. Felix's expression dropped instantly. Winnie silently dragged me to the car. On the way home, I sobered up, glancing at Winnie's face, cautiously trying to calm her. But you can't blame me for this. I didn't call those models. Felix did. It was all Felix, had nothing to do with me. Winnie glanced over. Really? Felix said you did. Felix, you sold me out. As Winnie's face darkened, clearly upset, I resorted to my ultimate weapon. Playing cute. I whined, twisting in my seat. Sweetheart, I'm sorry. Please don't be mad. Winnie always falls for the soft approach, her ears visibly reddening. But she stayed silent. Really that mad? I pulled out my trump card. In the car, I began talking big and dirty. I miss you, though probably not in the right way. My mind's all blurred. Can I put my hand under your shirt? Just want to feel if you have a conscience. I'm kinda hungry. All I want tonight is tofu. As long as you don't say you're tired, I'll try any position. I was getting a kick out of it, and Winnie got redder, breathing faster. Finally, she snapped, just wait till we're home. So, what usually takes half an hour took only 15 minutes today. Once we got out, we were all over each other. Right until she pushed me onto the bed. You can touch, but only me, okay? Still jealous, huh? I teased, pulling her closer by wrapping my legs around her. Winnie, already riled up by my invite, couldn't hold back. Right then, I slipped a medical report into her hand. Winnie suddenly froze. Samuel, are you not feeling well? Oh, really? I said, proudly patting the medical report. The results were in just a minor issue. Winnie's expression shifted dramatically from worry to helplessness. The kiss that followed was as tender as it gets. When she couldn't hold it in any longer, she let go of me and ran to the bathroom. Carrie saw I wasn't responding and thought I was unwilling. She shot me a look, sounding increasingly impatient. I laughed heartily outside the bathroom door. A moment later, Winnie came out with a hint of moisture lingering on her, letting out a sigh. You did that on purpose. It was intentional because you got mad at me earlier. That night, until she fell asleep, Winnie's warm hand lay on mine. Samuel. Yeah? Do you think I can be a good partner? I softened my voice and placed my hand over hers. You're a wonderful lover, so naturally, you will be a wonderful partner. Thank you, Samuel. I'm so happy in this life. I looked up and kissed her. Me too. There's no standard answer for happiness. But luckily, I found the answer after all.